Hello everyone and welcome back to the Plantery. This is Dr. Jared and today we're going to be talking about cutting back our gravel garden. So our gravel garden was installed by students back last spring in April 2021. The reason we wanted to try this approach here at SFA and in East Texas is because a lot of my colleagues further north as well as in Europe have done this approach of planting, where what you do is you plant perennial plugs in somewhere around 4 to 5 inches of gravel. The goal here is that you're trying to reduce the level of maintenance that you would have to do in a garden bed throughout the growing season. What this gravel layer does is it's very low in nutrients, and also it doesn't hold a lot of organic matter. And so because of this, weed germination is much less than it would be in a garden bed. So the goal here is to create an environment where we can plant plants in it, have very little maintenance, but still have ecological value and beauty as well too for people as they pass by, as well as for people to enjoy when they're walking through the plantery. So this again was just a trial prototype bed. We only did about 400 square feet to try to get an idea of what different plants would grow well in here. And I'll be honest, like both me and the students kind of had some doubts as to whether or not this would work, but it did. And so now our goal is to come in and cut all this vigorous growth back that happened last year. Again, our goal is that we really want to try to minimize the amount of organic matter that builds up in that 4 to 5 inch layer of coarse grit that we put on top of the soil. So I've got a couple of talented Plantery team members that's going to be helping me cut back the gravel garden today. And as we go along, we're going to talk about a couple of the different approaches that we work with for cutting these plants back. So let's get cutting. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how to cut something back that's really twiggy, like this calumet here. Calumet was a really great grower for us in the gravel garden. It bloomed right after we planted it back in April, all the way through into November. And it was a great source of pollen for a lot of the bees that were acting on it. So what I like to do is I like to go in here near the base with a pair of pruners and just start cutting it back. And just remove all that growth. Usually I cut back somewhere around 4 to 6 inches, try to leave a little bit of those stems left, and then after that, all I've got left is this twiggy growth that then I can compost. And for cutting back grasses, instead of using pruners, I like to use a pair of long-handled shears like you see here. And so for cutting back the grass, again, I just go in and cut the stems back to about 4 to 6 inches coming up out of the grounds. And so using these, I can make pretty quick work of cutting this residual organic matter back. We try to wait as late as we possibly can to cut these garden beds back because we want to really try to encourage some of the insects and stuff that are living in the stems to be able to have habitat as much as we can. But the other thing too that we got to consider is that we want these plants to grow and perform as well as they can too. So right now it's the end of January, next week's February, and so already we've got some nice greenery coming up in this Pycnanthemum tenuifolium. This is narrow leaf mountain mint. It's a wonderful native plant for pollinators. But we want to go ahead and cut this back because as you can see, some of these shoots are already starting to elongate in here. And so we really want to make sure that not only encouraging habitat for good insects, but also making sure that we're encouraging good plant growth as well. If we wait too much later in the season, especially for us down here in the deep south to cut this back, a lot of this plant growth is already going to start emerging up. Now further north, up near the Great Lakes area and up in the northeast, you can wait as late sometimes as late February, even early March, maybe even later than that to start cutting your plants back. But for us here in the deep south, a lot of times we have to start towards the end of January or beginning of February as this plant growth is emerging. Okay, so as you can see, we've cut back most of the gravel garden now. Sarah's just going behind and kind of raking up some of the organic matter that's left over. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through with one of our battery-powered blowers, and we're going to try to blow as much of the organic matter left as possible. We may have to go back in and cut back a few of the plants just a little bit more to get some of that we missed as we were giving them their annual haircut. But one of the reasons we use the blower is really just try to get a lot of this fine material out of there so that way, again, we're not increasing that organic matter layer we're trying to reduce that as much as we possibly can, because as we start getting more organic matter in here, we're going to start to see more weed growth, and that again is one of the #1 reasons we're using this gravel garden layer as a mulch for this planting. So whenever I'm blowing off, again, safety first, some type of safety glasses, as well as in my hat, I always keep a pair of earplugs in here as well too. So I'll suit up with those and we'll do some blowing off of this area. And then of course the last question to ask is, what do we do with all this biomass that we've accumulated? Again, a lot of people don't appreciate just how much insect life it lives within the stems of different plants. We have things in here like Joe Pyeweed, Eutrochium. We also have Echinacea, purple coneflower. And again, a lot of insects like to lay eggs and have larvae in there. So a lot of times what we like to do with this material is not necessarily just chop it up willy-nilly. While we do mow some of our landscape perennial plantings, we like to also leave other areas either untouched, or when we cut it back, we set this organic matter off to the side and perhaps a fence row or a wooded area. We also could put it in a compost pile as well too, again leaving it kind of off to the side, so that way as these insects and stuff begin to emerge, they can come out and live for another season. That's one of the things again that we're really trying to do with these plantings here in the Plantery at SFA, is to encourage not only beauty and ecological value in the landscape, but also try to make the world a better place for insects and other organisms as well too, from birds to beetles, butterflies, all kinds of organisms that come through here, including people. So again, thank you for watching today and learning about how we cut back the gravel garden. Until next time, keep growing.